for live record, or you need me to wait a second?
Oh, already ready.
Already ready? Fantastic. Well, my name is Rachel Wazalewski. I'm with the VCU College of Engineering, and VCU is Virginia Commonwealth University. We're located in Richmond, Virginia. So for folks who are not aware of where Richmond is, it is basically if you were to make a bullseye out of the state of Virginia, we are right in the middle of it. So it happens to be the capital city, but it's a smaller city. So I grew up in Atlanta and happen to think of it more of like a really big town or a really tiny city. So a lot of people think of it as they call it an urban environment, but it's definitely, kind of a smaller feel to it. The way that we do engineering at VCU is we sort of operate like a school within a school. So when students apply, they are applying via the Common App, and they are applying to a specific major within the College of Engineering. So the different majors that we have are biomedical engineering, chemical and life science, computer science. We have electrical engineering and computer engineering. It's two different majors within one department, and then mechanical and nuclear engineering. Chemical and life science engineering for us is a two-track system, so students can choose between chemical engineering or life sciences as their specialization. So it just kind of changes the approach a little bit. Sometimes we get the question, well, what is life science engineering? And the easiest way to describe it is a more biological approach to the chemical engineering process. So from that, some of the different types of things that students might be working on in this are bioprocessing, so turning a cell into basically a chemical engineering lab for you, something like that. And then on the mechanical and nuclear engineering side, it's very similar. It's a two-track system, so students can choose a traditional mechanical track, or they can choose that nuclear specialization. For us, we do have the most complete nuclear engineering program at the undergraduate level in the state of Virginia. So for those students who are going into engineering for pay, nuclear engineering happens to be the fastest growing pay rate of the different engineering types. So I do joke, somewhat joke, I guess I should say, that if you're looking at engineering for money, some students are, nuclear engineering is not a bad way to go. Actually, none of them are really a bad way to go with the average salaries these days. But those are the different programs that we have. And kind of as we go through, if you have questions, you have the students who have questions on specific programs, I'd be happy to go over those. We are a smaller engineering program. So VCU itself is the largest school in the state of Virginia. They have about 28,000 undergraduate students, but we have fewer than 2,000 students in the engineering program. And the breakdown, hopefully you're able to see it on the recording below. Right now, mechanical is my largest program, but probably within the next year or two, computer science will rival that in size. And we do go all the way through PhD in all of our programs. So for students who are looking for maybe a PhD option, they can do that with VCU as well. The next important thing that most of my undergraduates have questions on, what do I need to have in order to be admitted? So like I mentioned before, it's the Common App, and the mid 50% is like a 3.6 to about a 4.2 if we're doing some rounding on that. And then we have higher statistical significance on the SAT, so I go with that one first, but I know a lot of students are taking the ACT these days, but 1150 to a little over 1300 is mid 50. We are looking more closely at the math versus the critical reading. That's not to say we don't look at both parts. We do still look at the standardized test scores. We are not test optional. VCU itself is test optional, but not if you want to be considered for engineering or for scholarships. And then if you're looking at an equivalent ACT, that would be about a 28 is what we would be looking for from that. We take AP, IB, dual enrollment credits. Any student that needs to see that chart, I'm happy to send them that link. It's in our VCU bulletin. So if anyone needs to see the course breakdown for the different majors, or if they want to take a look at AP or IB scores, all they have to do is Google VCU bulletin and select undergraduate study, and they're able to find all of that information in there. And then of course I'll provide my contact information. So any student that can't find exactly what they are looking for, I'm happy to send them the exact link because it's a pretty big document. If you have transfer students, we do accept transfer students, and basically what we're looking for those students, primarily strong grades in math and science. I do prefer that they have calculus already, and that they have at least one lab science is what we're looking for. And generally a cumulative grade point average of 3.0. And we are kind of looking for a solid 3.0 on that. We do sometimes admit students with lower than that, depending on the extenuating circumstances, but basically we're looking for a solid 3.0 on that. For scholarship consideration, students really should get their application in by November 15th. That is for merit-based review. Most of the scholarships that we review students for fall within that November 15th deadline, so just get the Common App in by November 15th. We do have a few specialized scholarships that we post on our website, and we do send the link that you are hopefully seeing on the screen. We send that to all of our applicants so that they are aware of the application for things like the Wright Scholarship. So that's one of our donors who passed away this past year, Ken Wright, you see in the photo. And if any student is in FIRST Robotics, we do offer 2 FIRST Robotics scholarships. They're very large scholarships, and we offer 2 of those annually. This is a little odd for me because normally I'm doing this presentation in person, and I kind of pause and ask people if they have questions. So I see that there are a couple of students logged on now, so feel free to interrupt me at any point in time. I'm used to being interrupted in the middle of a presentation. So to kind of go all the way through it without having questions I feel like I'm talking to myself at the moment. So, please don't hesitate if you do have a question. With the College of Engineering, we have our own student services and we have our own career services. Students very rarely think about student services when they're planning their college experience, but they're a very important part of our process. Our student services, we have a staff member assigned to each individual major, and then within that, they handle you all the way from orientation to graduation. So they are required to meet with you once a semester. You can't get out of it. I'm a student myself, and I have to meet with my advisor, Andy, every semester, or I have a hold on my account. I can't move on. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. And we have a lot of different events throughout the year, cookouts and that sort of thing. The thing I like to point out, my marketing department made this very pretty slide that says tutoring free of charge. And I scowled at it a little bit because you don't pay anything additional for tutoring, but you did pay tuition. And one of the things that your tuition pays for is tutoring. So I tell everyone, make sure that you go to your tutor, especially for engineering, because it is not an easy major. So definitely take advantage of the service that's set up for you. Engineering can be a difficult major. So we want to make sure that we give you the resources to be successful in that process. Our career services department is dedicated to helping students from everything, internships, co-ops, full-time employment. Last year, 100% of our students were employed or in graduate school within 6 months of graduation. The average salary for our students is around $60K. And we have 2 career fairs every year, one in the fall, one in the spring. We have over 80 employers that come to that. The spring one is actually can be the smaller one, and we had well over 80 for our spring event. We also do everything from mock interviews. We have companies come in and do that. They have weekly sessions. We have companies from all over the globe who come all over the country. So Google and Canon and big names, and then also names that are more local to Virginia. They work with students to help them with interview techniques, behavioral and technical interviews. Those are both parts for an engineering student. And we have coffee, bagel, donut hour. So every other week we have coffee, bagel, and donuts when we're not in the middle of Corona COVID 2020. No one's sending bagels and donuts to anyone's house this week, so I kind of wish they were. So that's our career services department, and they're fantastic. A lot of our students are interested in facilities. So right now we have East and West Hall. Wish I could show them to you directly. Normally, if I had my phone, I'd kind of pop you in a lab or two along this, but right now our departments are separated by major by building. You can't tell that from looking at this picture, but those two buildings on the slide are across Belvedere from each other. So they are literally across the street. And then we are adding a new research building that in theory will be done this fall. So that is the engineering research building, and it actually connects to Engineering East Hall. So it'll be a pass through, which also connects to our School of Business because we have a lot of partnerships with business. And then in the back side of one of our buildings, we have a nano characterization center. We also have an educational clean room. So we have a class 1000 clean room that's available for undergraduate students. It happens to be the largest educational clean room of its class in the United States. And so clean room is where students learn to make microchips. And then we also have a maker's garage for all engineering students. And that is 3D printing and lathes and industrial sanders, CNC machines, so additive and subtractive manufacturing where students can work on projects. And then in the Institute for Engineering and Medicine, we have a scanning electron microscope, well, actually several of them, surface technologies. So anyone that's interested in engineering and medicine, that's a research facility that they might want to participate in as a student. And then just a little bit down the road, we have actually 2 miles down the road, so we have a bus system that can take students down there. We have in the biotechnology park, we have a couple of different labs. So we have over a $25 million grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for a program called Medicines for All. And then we also have another institute that's pharmacy on demand for making shippable pharmaceuticals basically on demand, so with printable pharmaceuticals. So anyone that has an interest in pharmaceutical research, which can be biomedical or chemical, usually in its nature, you could potentially be doing research there. And then speaking of research, we have a couple of different opportunities for students. If you're coming from out of state, the Dean's Early Research Initiative might be a little difficult for you, but that is for high school students who have an interest in participating in research on campus. So over the summer, they would come in and spend 40 hours a week doing research under a PI, primary investigator, which is normally like a postdoc student or grad student. And then there's a poster presentation. Probably what's more applicable to most students is the Dean's Undergraduate Research Initiative. It's very similar to the Dean's Early Research Initiative, but it's a program for undergraduate students who are already at VCU. And this is where you can earn a stipend for doing research. We also have a program that's called Vertically Integrated Projects. These are multidisciplinary. And this is where students can receive academic credit. So it usually fulfills an engineering elective for most students, unless they're just taking it because they want to take it. It's not necessarily to fulfill a thing. But with that, it's a multi-year project, and it could be anything from Hyperloop to unmanned aerial vehicles to biomedical-based research to, it's wide-ranging. It's really neat. And again, you get academic credit for it. I don't have a slide for this, but you'll happen to see a big sticker on that Hyperloop car that says Da Vinci Center. The Da Vinci Center for Product Innovation and Design is a partnership that we have between engineering, business, and the School of Arts, and actually humanities and sciences. And so students who participate in that program can earn a certificate in product innovation and design. And over time, they have to take things like business for engineers and art for engineers. And then at the end of that, there's a culmination project that is commissioned by a company. And you have to solve a problem that the company has. They're not making up something. It's a real live, basically are commissioned to solve a problem. And so that's something that students can participate in if they're in engineering, business, or arts, or humanities and sciences. Oh, I do have a slide on. I forgot to put a slide in there. Well, I won't talk about this then because I just talked about it. And it goes concurrently with your major. That's the important part. Students, don't ever do this for your own presentation, but I like to point out that just because we're small, it does not mean that we're not mighty. We have tons of student organizations. This is just within the College of Engineering alone. This isn't even including all of the things that students have access to at VCU. everything from cultural organizations to organizations, professional organizations for your major. We have an extremely active NSBE chapter at VCU, which is the National Society for Black Engineers. Those students are very brokenhearted right now because they just missed national conference. They had to cancel it due to COVID-19, and it literally was canceled like 2 days before they had to leave. And so they're extremely active group with us and do a lot of outreach and hands-on projects. But as you can see, there's quite a bit. And if there's a particular club or organization that you want to be a part of that you don't see, you can always start one at VCU. I've been at VCU since 2009, 2008. I can't remember when I started. But since I've been there, Hyperloop has started, the Linux users group has started, OSTEM has started, and I mean those are all active and ongoing and new. I told you that I would make sure to get you my contact information. So we are a very small office. It's Mark, Rachel, and Benjamin, or Benny. I'm the Rachel of Mark, Benny, and Rachel. And so my contact information is right there, which is rlwazalewski@vcu.edu. If I win the lottery tomorrow, though, I probably won't still do this. So there's always the askengineering@vcu.edu if you have any questions. That's checked by all three of us. So like I said, if I happen to win the lottery, I'm going to Aruba as soon as I'm allowed, or insert other tropical island here. But so that's how to get in touch with us, and all of our social media tags. And so that's generally what I would consider my presentation. If anyone has any questions for me.
Okay.
I just put everyone off of, unmuted everyone. So if the kids have any questions, feel free to call or feel free to ask.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I understand. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Somebody's not muted anymore.
Yeah.
And I think you guys can see me now and not the presentation. So hi, I'm the one with the big headphones on so that you can't hear my poor husband who's having to listen to my presentation in the background. My kids.
Oh, it was really all right. We appreciate it.
There was a, go ahead. I'm sorry, Lamont.
Oh, no, I was definitely, I mean, first of all, I appreciate the presentation. It was really good. So students are wondering about, I mean, it's a magnificent engineering program. The retention rate is always an issue at most schools, okay? Mm-hmm. So one thing, what is the retention rate and what is the strategy in order to achieve the number or success?
So we have really good retention between freshman and sophomore year. We have about an 80% retention rate between freshman and sophomore year. It gets, the picture gets a little more grim after that. A lot of that has to do with, as the courses get harder, students elect not to continue. Unfortunately, when we lose students, they're generally staying at VCU, so they're happy at VCU. It's just a lot of students choose not to continue on with engineering. We are actively all the time trying to make sure that we put in resources to make sure that students stay in engineering. Everything from that specialized advising program that I talked about. We make sure that our advisors are there. We have meetings with our faculty, and we put initiatives in place like early warning and the free tutoring and mentoring. And I mean, if you go on and on about all of the things we're trying to make sure that we do, because it's my goal as an enrollment specialist that any student that I admit, so any student that I say, yes, I believe this student, I'd love to see them at graduation in 4 or 5 years. So, if you go on and do 2 internships and you don't graduate for 6 years, I'm okay with that. I just want to see you walk across the stage or across the screen if we stay on teleclasses and telework for forever.
There was a question, a specific GPA that is required to graduate from the School of Engineering?
If I'm not mistaken, Student Services has that set at 2.0. We'd like for it to be a little bit higher, mainly for students to be competitive in the job market. So a lot of those entry courses or entry jobs, they are looking at GPA in addition to experience and that sort of thing. But we also have some programs where we're not going to let students get too many D, Fs, and Ws. So Ds or Fs are fairly explainable, but for the high school students, a W is a withdraw. And so that's where you could withdraw for any reason. It could be medical, it could be you're not passing the class, it could be any host of things, but we're not going to let you withdraw from the same class 4 or 5 times. We're certainly not going to let you get a D in the same class 4 or 5 times. So we have some things in place to make sure that we're not letting students dig their own academic hole.
Okay. And it looks like there was another question in regards to bioengineering. If you had any information about the growth of bioengineering and if that was becoming a much more popular major.
Sure. So I'm assuming when we say bio, referring to biomedical specifically. So I'm gonna refer to that. Biomedical engineering has actually been a really large field for a very long time. It's just that a lot of the times it got hidden in other programs like mechanical engineering, where you might be looking at materials or that sort of thing. With us, we actually have the oldest biomedical engineering program in the state of Virginia. We have something really cool. Our students actually go on medical rounds, so we actually have a practicum. VCU is a 2-campus system, so we have the academic side, which is mostly undergraduate, but we also have a medical campus that's 2 miles down the road. And so our undergraduates, they take an intro class where they have like instrumentation lab, where they learn how to do some basic things, some basic soldering and that sort of thing. But then in the practicum, they're actually going to follow a doctor around while they go on medical rounds, and they're going to go into an operating room and they're going to watch a surgery. And it's not because we think that every student's going to become a doctor. What biomedical engineering is, it is the concept that the human body is a machine, and we want to keep that machine running in the best possible condition for the longest amount of time, whether or not it's a replacement part, it's the diagnostic. So think about the car industry. Everything from getting your new car to all of the parts, how you diagnose what's wrong with your car, how you replace it, all of the stuff that goes into it. It's the same concept for biomedical engineering. And so for us, it's always not just for VCU, but for a lot of schools, biomedical has been a large program. It's just that a lot of students always thought of it as, I'm going to be a doctor. And that's not really, I mean, you can certainly go that route. We have many students who do, but it's more about the idea of designing. It could be cellular engineering, like some of the really cool research that they've got going on in there. We have a faculty member who does research on intercellular matrices. And basically that's how tightly cells weave together. And so he does a lot of cancer research. And so what they found is that cancer loves really tight cells because it can just crawl up them really fast. It's basically like the tighter it is, the easier it is for it to crawl across it and take over it. And so what they can do is they can actually disease cells that would normally grow tight. So like breast cancer, it's very fibrous, so it's easy for cancer to attack it. And so what they can do is they can say, okay, what can we do to make it so that it's less likely that the cancer will target these cells? So they've actually looked at, well, what happens if we give these cells diabetes? What happens if we increase the sugar? What happens if we decrease the sugar? We have faculty members who do regenerative bone research. We have faculty members who do materials, so like orthopedics. It's incredible what they're doing and coming up with. So it was a very long answer to a very short question, but
Bridget, can you speak about the diverse population at your school, and
yes.
how do you and this is not necessarily we are the world kind of question, but how do you work on them working together, coming from all parts of the world?
Sure. So for us, we're actually a very diverse engineering program. We have better diversity on race and ethnicity than we do on gender. We're at about 23% female. So we are more underrepresented on gender than we are on race and ethnicity. One of the things that you learn very quickly as an engineering student is you're going to have to do group work. Like I said, I'm actually in computer science, which is within the College of Engineering for us. And I'm in a group right now with 4 individuals, and we are all 4 vastly different ages at different scales in our life. And, we have, one of our members is gay, and we've got 2 parents, and we've got 2 transfer students. And we have, VCU has a real culture of diversity. So I feel like we struggle a little bit to sort of say what it is that we're doing to other places, because it's just inherent in what we do. The type of student we attract wants to be part of that. Like that's an appeal that we have, because it's ingrained in what we do. And so we support these organizations that raise up people who are different and people who have technically been underrepresented in our field. If you take a look at the national stats on different types of populations going into technology fields, it's scary to think that you look to the left and look to the right and that you might be the only person who looks like you. I mean, I have literally been in a class where there have only been 3 other women, and that's not really the norm for college, but it is the norm in STEM fields. And so we get out and we have different events and different initiatives, and we make sure that people have the support that they need in order to feel like they have a home. And our alumni are fantastic about coming in and supporting and being advocates for students. I've got one student who comes and meets with me probably once every 2 weeks, and she's a Black female engineer, a chemical engineer, and she said, there is only one other person who looks like me in my job. And I thought it was hard in college, but it's hard now. And she comes back and she talks to students about what's hard about it and how to advocate for themselves and how to be at the head of the table instead of sitting in the back. And I credit our alumni as much as I do our faculty and our staff for making sure that students have these resources, not only while they're at VCU, but when they're gone.
No, I had actually had one other question that came in, and it was the ranking of the engineering program, I guess nationally ranking, and I guess specifically the electrical engineering program.
So we aren't going to be in the top 10 ranking. So we are ranked in US News and World and News. Typically when people ask me about ranking, they're asking me, how competitive is your program? Can I get a job? Are people going to recognize it? And, I happen to mention that 100% of my students were employed or in graduate school within 6 months of graduation. Of that 100%, the vast majority of them are going into the working world, 72%. The remainder go on to graduate school or PhD programs right out. I mentioned the average salary being $60K. And so I think we're 120 something or the other with a 6-way tie. I care more about whether or not my students can get jobs, whether or not they're able to afford their lives when they're done. A lot of students have to take student debt now. Very few students have families who have saved enough to pay for all of their college. And so I want to make sure that if you have to take out a loan, that you're able to pay that back. And so that's, we're not going to have a huge impact on the ranking side, but we're definitely going to have the ability for students to get jobs, which is what I care about.
Any other questions from the field?
Look like we have some shy people on today, Rachel.
Have you met engineers? That's kind of a thing we're known for.
Exactly. That's why we appreciate you recording, because I know they're going to take full advantage of the recording.
Yeah, well, I did. I was mentioning I had a meeting with Mark and Benny this morning, and I was like, yeah, I'm doing this thing where they're recording me, and they both kind of stopped. And I was like, what kind of? Because I'm of the three of us, I'm the most introverted introvert that exists. I was like, yeah, they're recording this, and it's just going to be fun.
That's awesome. And oh, you know what too? I forget about this one question about the you talked about transfers, and so do you partner in with any particular community colleges? Like, so if they finish at the community college, there's a direct transfer into VCU?
So we actually have the entire university has guaranteed admission agreement with the VCCS, which is the Virginia Community College System. So in Virginia, we're all governed by a body called SCHEV, and then SCHEV also helps govern the community college system here. And so the College of Engineering has a separate specific guaranteed admission agreement for all of the VCCS. But any student that met the admissions requirements of the VCCS would also meet our admissions requirements, even if it wasn't from Virginia. So if you've got students from, Missouri or Kansas or California, we list all of our transferable courses as they come in from other students on our equivalency page. So any student that needs to look up and see if a course has been pre-evaluated, they can do that through our equivalency page. So just VCU transfer guide, just in a basic old Google search, or I guess, I don't know, whatever search, I use Google, but VCU transfer guide. And then from there, if you don't see a course, that doesn't mean that it's not going to transfer. It just means that we might have to evaluate it, especially at the engineering level. But if they're coming from Virginia, we've evaluated the entire VCCS curricula from start to finish, whether or not a student's taken that course or not. Most of them have. So that's preloaded in there. So if you have anyone from Virginia, it's easy peasy. But we don't have just one school that we partner with or anything like that. I'm actually the transfer coordinator. I don't know if you noticed that on the slide, but that's what I do. So we all work with freshmen, and then I'm the transfer coordinator. So if you've got a student that's coming from anywhere as a transfer student, be happy to work with them individually.
Real quick, do you have any scholarships that waive out-of-state tuition?
No, we wouldn't have the eligibility to do that. What VCU will do is they will often provide an assistance grant, and it's not going to make up the total difference at all, but we have often provided additional grants. And the College of Engineering itself has also done a top off occasionally. For one of the things that we've done occasionally is waive application fees. And so we don't actually waive the fee. What happens is my department pays the application fee. So if a student is coming from out of state and they would like to see if we have the ability to waive that application fee, they're welcome to contact us first. And if we have the budget to do that for that year, we're happy to send them a link and tell them the process. We've had the ability for at least the past 3 or 4 years to do that. So I'm not really sure what this year's going to do. We're all sort of having to react to business being different. So I'm assuming our budget won't be cut or changed. But as of right now, I think we'll still be able to do it for next year for any student that needs it.
And also, I'm just curious personally. I know a lot of times when out of town students are, they go to a VCU, when it's time to go home for Christmas break, do you guys make accommodations for out of town students on campus?
Yeah, so any student that's living on campus, they would work with housing on that. And sometimes they actually, if they have to close down the residence halls, tighter than Fort Knox, as I like to say, so nobody on campus, what they'll do is they often work with faculty or other students. Freshmen are not required to live on campus. Let me state that I highly, 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 add about 1,000 more, maybe 1,000,000 more highlies. I highly recommend living on campus, especially as a freshman. But you know, students who are coming from out of state or out of town are welcome to live in an apartment or, you know, rent a home. There are a lot of apartments nearby that cater to the concept of being a college student. So they have like 9-month leases. They can even help you do like a roommate search. Again, I can't recommend enough living on campus. We even have an engineering living learning community called Spark that's in a brand new residence hall that's right next. I mean, like you could throw a rock at our building from your residence hall if you really, really wanted to. So, you know, there are some real advantages to living on campus, but the housing office, we work with those students directly if they're not able to get home. So I think preferably if a student wants to get home, we'd like to try and work with them so that they can spend time with their families. But, you know, sometimes we know that finances are interesting, or, you know, maybe you have to work and you can't go back and visit your family. But we do try to make sure that we encourage students to do self-care. And part of that is making sure that you are able to be with your network and your support group.
Any other questions?
I got one more just in case. I don't want to like monopolize the conversation, but I'm just curious about work study jobs for your engineer students.
So work study is technically through financial aid. So if a student qualifies for work study, there are a lot of on-campus employers, places like the library. I know they hire a ton of students. Mail services hires a lot of students. Even like my office, I hire federal work study students to do tours. My only requirement is my students have to be in engineering or computer science. So I'm not hiring art students for my tours. But even some offices will not require students to be on the specific federal work study. So there are part-time job opportunities. That's one of the nice things about being at a large state school. That school within a school option is you get the smaller options within the College of Engineering, but then when you go outside of that, there's the gym and the Starbucks and the Chick-fil-A and the, you know, the big, huge library. Like all of those big resources are available to students, and a lot of them hire students to cover those jobs. So, and a lot of off-campus places too will utilize our federal work study program, mainly because the pay for those students actually comes from the federal government. So they become very inexpensive to an employer. So students can take advantage of that. I know some of the local botanical gardens and that sort of thing have often been smart about taking advantage of that federal work study program through us. So if you join engineering and you like to talk to people, which is no one ever, come and apply for one of my front desk positions, because I'm always looking for tour guides because I don't like to give them because I'm an introvert.
I think if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and close it out now. Maybe we'll give them another 10 seconds to see if there's any questions that the students are a little bit too shy to ask.
Back when we used to do like chat, just like the text chat sessions, if you had made that announcement, no one would have asked a question during the entire thing. And then in the last 10 seconds, you would just see just a down the million questions. Be interesting to see if this new format causes the same effect.
Well, no chat questions either, so.
Yeah, no, nothing. Radio silence. I hope everyone's been adjusting to the change in their school schedule. My kids hate it, but my kids are 8 and 6, and they think when they're home that they get to play video games and run around outside. But I've been making them sit at the table with me and do work. So I hope you guys are enjoying it more than my kids are. They're being quiet, so no, they're not enjoying it.
think they're all muted.
Well, very well. So I think Lamont will go ahead and close it out. So very nice
Have any
discussion. Oh,
specific questions?
Sure.
No, I'm
oh,
saying
I
I
thought,
don't have specific
nope.
questions, but I just wanted to thank you for your presentation today. It was very helpful and very informal. Thank you.
My pleasure.
okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and close it out with that. And thank you all for joining. And Rachel, we really appreciate your presentation.
My pleasure. Y'all have a great day.
You too.